Helen stood in front of the bathroom mirror, watching water drip from the shower head. Drip, drip, drip. Each drop felt like another second of her life disappearing down the drain. She was 67 years old, and somewhere along the way, she had become invisible. If you've ever felt like nobody really sees you anymore, then you need to hear this story. Because what happened next changed everything. Hey, before we dive in, please hit that like button, share this story with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe so you never miss our stories. Also, drop a comment and tell us where you're watching from. We absolutely love hearing from you. Helen lived in Riverside, a quiet neighborhood in Jacksonville where the houses all looked the same and the days blended together like watercolors left in the rain. Every morning, she woke up at 6. She made coffee for her husband, Robert. She made his breakfast. She ironed his shirts. Then she went to work at the hospital, sitting at the switchboard, connecting calls, listening to other people's emergencies while her own life stayed stuck in place. Robert had been her husband for 42 years. 42 years of cooking his favorite meals, washing his clothes, and listening to him talk about his day while he never once asked about hers. When she spoke, his eyes would drift to the television. When she laughed, he didn't notice. She had become like the furniture in their house. Useful. Expected. Completely unseen. Helen couldn't remember the last time Robert had looked at her with real attention. The last time he had touched her with tenderness instead of routine. The last time she had felt like a woman instead of just a wife. The shower had been dripping for 3 weeks. She mentioned it to Robert twice. He said he would fix it. He never did. So finally, Helen called a plumber. The plumber's name was Daniel. He arrived on a Thursday afternoon when Robert was at work. Helen opened the door and felt something strange flutter in her chest. Daniel was young, maybe 35, with kind brown eyes and a smile that reached all the way to those eyes. He wore a blue work shirt with his name stitched on the pocket. "Mrs. Patterson? I'm here about the shower," he said. "Please, call me Helen," she heard herself say. Her voice sounded different. Lighter. Daniel followed her through the house to the bathroom. Helen suddenly felt embarrassed about the outdated tile, the faded towels, the way everything in her life seemed old and worn out. But Daniel didn't seem to notice any of that. "This shouldn't take too long," he said, kneeling beside the shower. "Just a worn washer, I think." Helen stood in the doorway, not sure if she should leave or stay. She decided to stay. "Do you live here alone?" Daniel asked as he worked. His hands moved carefully, skillfully. "No, I live with my husband," Helen said. The word husband felt heavy in her mouth. "He's a lucky man," Daniel said, glancing back at her. Helen froze. Nobody had said anything like that to her in years. Decades, maybe. She felt heat rise in her cheeks. "Thank you," she whispered. As Daniel worked, they talked. Really talked. He asked her about her job at the hospital. He asked about her favorite foods, her favorite music, what she liked to do on weekends. Questions Robert had stopped asking before their first anniversary. Helen found herself telling Daniel things she hadn't told anyone. About how she loved old movies from the 1950s. About how she used to paint watercolors but stopped because Robert said it made a mess. About how sometimes she felt like she was disappearing, bit by bit, until one day there would be nothing left at all. Daniel stopped working. He turned and looked directly at her. Not through her. Not past her. At her. "You're not invisible," he said quietly. "I see you." Those 4 words crashed into Helen like a wave. Her heart pounded. Her hands trembled. She felt something she thought had died long ago wake up inside her chest. Want. Desire. The feeling of being alive. "All done," Daniel said, standing up and testing the shower. The dripping had stopped. Good as new. But Helen didn't feel like anything was fixed. She felt like something had broken open inside her. Something that had been locked away for so long she forgot it existed. Daniel packed his tools. Helen walked him to the door. When he handed her the bill, their fingers touched. It was just a second. Just a brush of skin against skin. But Helen felt electricity shoot up her arm. "If you ever need anything else fixed," Daniel said, "just call. Anytime." After he left, Helen stood with her back against the closed door. Her whole body was shaking. She felt guilty. She felt excited. She felt terrified. She felt more awake than she had in 20 years. That night, Robert came home and ate the dinner she cooked without tasting it. He watched television without speaking. He went to bed without kissing her goodnight. Same as every night. But Helen lay awake in the darkness, thinking about kind brown eyes and 4 simple words. I see you. The shower wasn't dripping anymore. But something else had started. Something dangerous. Something that felt like coming back to life after being dead for decades. Helen didn't know it yet, but her whole world was about to change. Because sometimes, when someone finally sees you after years of being invisible, you can't go back to hiding. Even if you want to. Even if you should. The drip had stopped. But Helen's heart had started beating again. And once a heart remembers how to beat, it's very hard to make it stop. Helen told herself it was wrong. She told herself to forget about Daniel. She told herself that 67-year-old women don't feel butterflies in their stomachs over plumbers who smile at them. But her body didn't listen. Her heart didn't listen. And when her phone buzzed 3 days later with a text message, her hands shook as she picked it up. Hi Helen, this is Daniel. Just checking that the shower is still working okay. Daniel. Helen stared at the message for 10 minutes. She should delete it. She should block the number. She should pretend this flutter of hope in her chest was just indigestion. Instead, she typed back, working perfectly. Thank you for checking. His response came immediately. Glad to hear it. If you ever need anything, I mean it. Anything at all. That night, while Robert snored beside her, Helen texted Daniel again. Just small talk. About the weather. About work. About nothing and everything. It felt dangerous and delicious, like stealing candy when you're supposed to be on a diet. The texts turned into daily conversations. Good morning messages. Jokes that made Helen laugh out loud at the switchboard. Questions about her day that Robert never asked. Daniel wanted to know about her childhood, her dreams, the parts of herself she had buried under decades of being a good wife. 2 weeks after fixing the shower, Daniel texted, Can I see you? Just for coffee. As friends. Helen knew she should say no. She knew that coffee with Daniel was crossing a line. But she was so tired of being good. So tired of being invisible. So tired of feeling dead inside. Yes, she typed. Tomorrow. 2 o'clock. The cafe on Riverside Avenue. She wore her blue dress, the one Robert said made her look old. She put on lipstick for the first time in months. When she saw her reflection in the cafe window, she barely recognized herself. Her eyes were bright. Alive. Daniel was already there, sitting at a corner table. When he saw her, he stood up. He actually stood up for her. Robert hadn't stood up when she entered a room in 30 years. You look beautiful, Daniel said. Helen wanted to cry. When was the last time someone called her beautiful? When was the last time someone looked at her like she mattered? They talked for 2 hours. Daniel told her about his life. He had been married once, but his wife left him because he worked too much. He had no children. He spent his days fixing broken things in other people's houses, wishing he could fix the broken things in his own heart. Why me? Helen finally asked. I'm old enough to be your mother. Why are you interested in me? Daniel reached across the table and took her hand. His touch was warm and gentle and it made Helen's whole body wake up. Age is just a number, he said. You're more alive than most people I meet. You're kind and funny and interesting. And when you smile, really smile, it's like watching the sun come out. Helen pulled her hand away. Not because she wanted to. Because she was terrified of how much she wanted to keep it there. This is wrong, she whispered. I'm married. Are you though? Daniel asked quietly. Really married? Or are you just living with someone who doesn't see you anymore? The words hit Helen like a punch. Because he was right. She wasn't married. She was imprisoned. There's a difference between sharing a life and just sharing a house. They met again. And again. Always in secret. Always feeling guilty. Always feeling more alive than Helen had felt in decades. They walked in the park. They sat by the river. They talked about books and movies and all the places Helen wanted to visit but never would because Robert said traveling was a waste of money. One evening, sitting on a bench as the sun set, Daniel turned to Helen and said the words that would change everything. I need to tell you something, he said. His voice was shaking. The shower. Your address. Finding you. It wasn't an accident. Helen's heart stopped. What do you mean? I saw you, Daniel said. 6 months ago at the hospital. You were at the switchboard, and you smiled at someone walking by. It was the most beautiful smile I'd ever seen. I asked around. Found out your name. Your address. I waited until I saw something I could fix. The newspaper said you needed a plumber. So I called. I made sure I was the one who came. Helen stood up. Her legs felt weak. You stalked me? No. Yes. I don't know, Daniel said, standing too. I just knew I had to meet you. I knew you were special. Was I wrong? Look me in the eye and tell me you don't feel this too. Helen wanted to be angry. She wanted to feel violated. But instead, she felt something else. Chosen. Pursued. Wanted. For the first time in decades, someone had gone out of their way to find her. To see her. To choose her. I feel it, she whispered. God help me, I feel it too. Daniel pulled her close. And there, in the fading light, with the river flowing beside them and the world spinning on, they kissed. Helen kissed him back. And it felt like coming home to a place she never knew existed. But back at her real home, Robert was waiting. Robert, with his silence and his coldness and his complete inability to see that his wife was disappearing. Robert, who had built a prison out of their marriage and expected Helen to be grateful for the walls. That night, Helen lay in bed next to her husband and knew she had a choice to make. Stay in the safety of invisibility. Or step into the terrifying light of being seen. Her phone buzzed quietly. A text from Daniel. I love you. I know it's fast. I know it's complicated. But I love you. Helen looked at Robert's sleeping face. Then she looked at her phone. And slowly, with trembling fingers, she typed back 3 words that would destroy her old life and maybe, just maybe, build a new one. I love you too. For 3 weeks, Helen lived 2 lives. In one life, she was the quiet wife who cooked meals and answered phones and disappeared into the wallpaper. In the other life, she was a woman who laughed and felt desire and remembered what it meant to be truly alive. But 2 lives cannot exist in one body forever. Eventually, something breaks. It broke on a Tuesday. Helen had been careless. She left her phone on the kitchen counter while she showered. When she came out, wrapped in a towel with her hair dripping, Robert was standing there holding her phone. His face was red. His hands were shaking. Who is Daniel? He asked. His voice was cold and sharp as ice. Helen's stomach dropped. All the air left the room. She reached for her phone, but Robert pulled it away. Who is he? Robert shouted. I read the messages, Helen. All of them. How could you do this to me? After everything I've given you? Something inside Helen snapped. Maybe it was 42 years of being invisible. Maybe it was decades of swallowing her words and her dreams and herself. Maybe it was simply that she had tasted what it felt like to be seen, and she could never go back to being a ghost. What have you given me, Robert? Helen asked. Her voice was quiet but strong. A house? I clean it. Food. I cook it. A life. What life? You don't see me. You don't hear me. You don't love me. You own me. There's a difference. I'm your husband, Robert said. You're the man I've been invisible to for 42 years, Helen said. When was the last time you asked about my day? When was the last time you held my hand? When was the last time you looked at me like I was a person instead of a servant? Robert's face went from red to purple. So you're having an affair? At your age? Do you know how pathetic that is? More pathetic than staying in a marriage where I'm already dead? Helen asked. Daniel sees me, Robert. He chose me. He pursued me. He makes me feel like I matter. When was the last time you made me feel like I mattered? This is insane, Robert said. You're 67 years old. You're throwing away our marriage for some fantasy with a man young enough to be your son. What's he going to want with you when the excitement wears off? Helen walked to the bedroom. She pulled out a suitcase and started packing. Her hands didn't shake. Her heart was pounding, but not with fear. With freedom. Maybe nothing, Helen said. Maybe this ends in heartbreak. Maybe I'm making the biggest mistake of my life. But at least I'll be making a choice. At least I'll be living my life instead of being a decoration in yours. If you walk out that door, don't come back, Robert said. Helen zipped up her suitcase. She looked at the man she had spent most of her life with. She felt sadness. But she also felt relief. Goodbye, Robert, she said. She walked out the door. She got in her car. She drove to Daniel's apartment. And when he opened the door and saw her standing there with her suitcase, he didn't ask questions. He just pulled her inside and held her while she cried tears that were equal parts grief and joy. I chose you, Helen whispered. I chose me. Daniel kissed her forehead. You're the bravest person I know. Helen moved in with Daniel. People talked. Her co-workers whispered. Her neighbors judged. Some of her friends stopped calling. But Helen discovered something wonderful. She didn't care. For the first time in her life, she was living for herself. The weeks turned into months. Helen filed for divorce. Robert fought it at first, then gave up when he realized she wasn't coming back. Helen kept working at the hospital switchboard. Daniel kept fixing broken things. And together, they built something neither of them expected. A life. A real life. Full of laughter and conversation and the simple joy of being seen. Then came the morning Helen woke up feeling sick. At first, she thought it was stress. The divorce. The new life. Everything changing all at once. But when the sickness continued for a week, Daniel insisted she see a doctor. Helen sat in the doctor's office, expecting to hear about an ulcer or maybe just anxiety. Instead, the doctor smiled and said 4 words Helen never expected to hear at 67 years old. Helen, you're pregnant. The room spun. Helen gripped the edge of the examination table. That's impossible, she whispered. Rare, yes. Impossible, no, the doctor said. You're approximately 8 weeks along. I have to be honest with you, Helen. This pregnancy carries significant risks at your age. We need to monitor you very carefully. Helen drove home in a daze. Pregnant. At 67. It was dangerous. It was unexpected. It was terrifying. It was a miracle. When she told Daniel, he went pale. Then he started crying. Then he started laughing. Then he held Helen's face in his hands and said, We're having a baby. We're actually having a baby. Are you happy? Helen asked, because she genuinely couldn't tell. I'm terrified, Daniel said. But yes, I'm happy. Are you? Helen put her hand on her stomach. For decades, she thought her body was done. Finished. Old. Useless. But here it was creating life. Proving that miracles don't have expiration dates. I'm terrified too, Helen said. But yes, I'm happy. The pregnancy was difficult. Helen's body ached. The doctors worried. There were complications and scares and nights when Helen wondered if this miracle would survive. But it did. 7 months later, Helen gave birth to a healthy baby girl. They named her Grace. Because that's what she was. Pure Grace. A second chance. Proof that it's never too late to choose life. Helen looked at her daughter's tiny face and thought about all the years she spent being invisible. All the years she believed her worth was tied to being a good wife to a man who never saw her. All the years she was afraid to choose herself. If Daniel hadn't fixed that shower, where would she be now? Still invisible. Still dying slowly in a marriage that was already a grave. But he did fix the shower. And in fixing it, he broke open Helen's carefully constructed prison. He reminded her that desire doesn't die with age. That being seen is a basic human need. That choosing yourself isn't selfish. It's survival. Now, before we end, I want to ask you something. Have you ever felt invisible? Have you ever stayed somewhere because it was safe, even though it was killing you slowly? Drop a comment and let me know. And please, hit that like button, share this story with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more stories that touch the heart. Tell us where you're watching from. We love hearing from you. Helen's story isn't just about an affair. It's about a woman who finally refused to disappear. Who chose life over safety. Who proved that it's never too late to be seen, to be loved, to be fully, completely alive. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is choose yourself. Even when it's terrifying. Even when everyone judges you. Even when you're 67 years old and the world tells you your life is over. Hélène chose herself. And in doing so, she finally started living. The shower was fixed. But Helen was the one who got messed with. And thank God she did.